everybody. Just an enormous privilege to be here. I am not going to come with a clever sermon or anything. I just want to share what I believe is on the Father's heart for each one of you. And I really believe there's principles here that if we embrace them, our lives would never be the same. Our marriages and our families would never be the same. Relationships. I want to start with scripture from Genesis 11, 5-7. You all know the principle of the guys that was in unity in building this amazing structure, and then God came down and said, we better stop them, because of whatever they do when they're in unity will be successful. And the way they were going was not the right way. So God had to first of all confuse their language so that they may not understand one another's speech. And then there's another scripture also that refers to, and all this on the board there, it refers to where there is unity, the Lord commands His blessing. So if we walk in unity, whether it be in a marriage, whether it be as a family, whether it be as an organization or a ministry like all of us are involved in, where there's unity, God commands His blessing. Now the obvious question is, why don't we always see the blessing if we've got the same vision, we've got the same dreams as a family, and that type of thing? What is the missing link there? And obviously we know whatever is of God, the enemy would come with a counterfeit and he would mess up, and he would do quite a good job at that. And I just want to highlight one thing, one principle that I really believe is very significant to why don't we see the blessing, why do we see just struggles in relationships and communication and stuff like that? Why don't we see the fruit of, we together, we in unity, why don't we see the fullness of God's blessing in that and so on? So I want to touch on the one aspect of what contributes to that lack of unity, or what contributes to the lack of blessing that should have flown through unity. And with that I want to basically talk about the principle of communication. We all know communication, or we think it's very simple, it's just what I say, but there's different levels, and the clever people have analyzed it and basically grouped it in two levels of communication. The first one is what they call a topical level of communication. That's basically what I speak, the words that I speak about the subject, whatever. So that's the first level. Then there's a second level grouped together, two aspects, but the second level is basically a relational level of communication. And the relational level of communication is mostly the messages we send to one another in the realm of identity regarding their value. And that's a very important one, because that's the biggest impact of communication. That's basically saying messages we send to one another. So it's not verbal, it's not the verbal stuff we talk about. It's messages we send to one another in the realm of identity. It's always regarding their identity and their value as a person. And there's two levels of that one on the relational level of communication. The first one is voice inclination, and the second one is the body language. And I'll touch a little bit later on them, but just to see the impact that they've got, because we think, but it's all about what we say, it's all about the topic we're discussing, whether it's in our marriage, whether we're dealing with something, or we should be disciplining the kids, or we should be doing what, or whatever the situation might be, and so on. The impact of in communication, in what we carry across to the other person, on a topical level is only 7%. So only 7% of what is conveyed in communication is based on what we say, what we hear the other person say, or what the words that they speak. The 93% is non-verbal. So 93% is communicated in an area where we don't understand that we even communicated, and that's the real impact and so on. And there's a scripture that says, my people perish through two things. Anybody that can help me on the two things? Why do we perish for, my people? Lack of knowledge and lack of vision. Okay, so those two things, not lack of money or anything like that. And this is one of those areas where we perish in relationships, whether it be our marriage, whether it be in a work relationship, whether it be with our son or daughter. We perish. We lack the life that should have been flowing through that because of lack of knowledge, not knowing what's happening, not knowing how to fix it, and so on. So basically, if we look at the relational side of it, it's 93%, of which voice inclination is about 38%, and body language is about 55%. And I'm going to give you some examples just to, in our own situation mostly and so on. that you've got a bigger understanding of what does it mean. But just know that what you thought you're saying to your wife or to the next one or to your husband is only 7% of what's communicated. And the dangerous part is the 93%, and that's what I want to elaborate a little bit on, that we can understand that one. Many times you as a husband, when there's a bit of an argument or a bit of a difference, and you get accused by your wife and said, but I only said that. So I only said these words. And what's her normal response? It's not what you said, it's how you said it. So she's picking up something there that's being said, but that's not being said verbally. And those are the things that we're talking about. And those are the things that's got the impact and normally devastating, because it's regarding my value, it's regarding my identity. And that's what I want to just bring through to you today. And as we carry on, please don't feel judged or whatever else, because God's going to stir up some stuff and so on. We're going to get to some solutions, and that we can, so there's a way out, and that's why I bring the message and so on. I want to play just to start with some of the examples, and you can see for yourself what is the father saying, what is the little girl receiving, and what is she saying, and what is being communicated on a topical level, what's communicated on a different level, and so on. So if you can just listen carefully, then I'll carry on with the others. But what I want to say is, please don't feel condemned by what is said, but just hear what God is saying to you. As I think Craig so rightly said, this is not about the messages that will be spoken about today or the topics. Allow God to stir in each one of our hearts, Lord, what is for me? What do you want me to do with it? And so on. And how do I go back? And many times we're blind. And God does not judge us for what we did or didn't do in our blindness. But once we've got revelation, He would keep us accountable for what we know. And so part of today is to make us aware of a certain area that for most of us we've been blind in that area. Now can we find life in our relationships, in our marriages, in our workspace? How can we as a team in the ministry, how can we really see God's blessing because this area has been dealt with and so on. So if we can just look, this is a movie clip of Hope Float, dad and a mom that's at hassles, and they've come to the place where dad decides he's going to move in with a girlfriend, and he's having to tell her, and you see the little girl, possibly about 8 years old, just respond to dad moving out of the house and so on. So just look at this.
Because I want a divorce, Bert.
I'm coming with you, Daddy! Bernice, I'm going with my daddy.
Bernice, what do you think you're doing?
I'm going with you.
Honey, that's impossible.
But I'm going with you.
No, you've got to stay here with your mom. Bertie, you going to help me out here?
You told me you wanted me with you, remember?
Listen, honey, I've got to go. Now, don't do this to yourself, okay? Don't make a scene. Now, go on back inside. Go ahead.
Stop it, Daddy!
Bernice, you know I'd take you with me if I could.
You can!
Try to understand, baby. Connie and I, we need this time to ourselves to try to make it go. Then I'll come back for you. I promise. I promise. I promise. Now go on inside, please.
You want me, you wrote in the letter. Let me in, you want me.
I'll always want you, Bernice. You're my little princess.
No.
But your mother, she needs you.
No.
And you need her.
No.
I love you, princess. I gotta go.
Did you hear what that little girl was picking up on a relational level? Did you hear what the dad says? Stuff like, I always want you, I will be there for you, I'll come back for you. Did you hear responses and so on? It was just the opposite of, you don't want me, you're not going to be there for me, you're not going to come through for me. So all along through the whole turmoil in the marriage, she was picking up all the relational messages. And this poor little girl would grow up with all that pain, and that the enemy would make sure, because the enemy is such a liar, he would come through and he will impart a lie. It's not God's truth. It's not that the father didn't love her or anything like that. He was just thinking of his own pain in his own way out at that moment and so on. But it's not what he has done, because she can forgive the dad but still sit with that feeling of, I don't belong, nobody's going to be there for me, and that I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy being loved, and that type of thing. It was my fault. It's my fault that mom and dad walked out on us and so on, or that dad walked out on us and so on. So right through our lives, the enemy would make sure that whatever lie is imparted, and I've embraced that lie in my moment of vulnerability, the enemy would make sure that that same lie gets repeated right through my life. He'll just use the different circumstances. Tomorrow it's somebody else, or it's a teacher, or it's the pastor, or it's a boss, or whatever else. Or then my spouse would unknowingly repeat similar messages coming from the enemy. So it's really not it's not my wife, they're not the enemy, but there's a enemy out there is wanting to kill, steal and destroy. And he will bring distortions in messages and stuff like that. So those are the things that we're talking about and so on. Just some of and unless she gets healed somewhere and she opens her heart to the Lord to impart truth, that thing will just repeat and repeat in many, many situations and so on. Some of their own stories of our own life growing up and so on. My wife Mariki, we've been married now for 44 years. But it's been a tough journey in the beginning. She came from also a broken family background and so on. And there was a situation, it wasn't a malicious one, but she was abandoned sort of being a toddler, a year old and so on. It's just something that happened, and for that moment her heart was wide open and massive fear came in her heart and so on. But a situation where the parents weren't there for her and so on. And so that thing crept in immediately, that lie of the enemy of you're going to be abandoned, nobody's going to be there for you and so on. The ones that should protect you is not there for you. So that thing came in, and then dad was actually a farmer at heart, but had to work on the mines, so was always working long shifts and that type of thing, never there for them. So again the feeling of the one that should love and should protect and should nurture is not there. And then also marital problems and ran away from the home at 16 and that type of thing. And then she married me, thought everything's going to be alright, I should have all the answers and fix everything and so on. And I came from my own broken background and stuff like that, and ended up studying engineering. And then our oldest daughter eventually died of cancer, and I in my first year had to stop, did a 6-year study and worked my backside off to get somewhere. So my opportunity to get somewhere through studies and to provide for them was stopped with the death of our daughter and so on. Anyway, so just me indulging myself in work, trying to find my own identity and stuff like that. Obviously I was still also never there for. So the same message of you're going to be abandoned, you're going to be left behind, excuse me, nobody's going to be there for you, just kept on repeating. And that wasn't my message or dad's message. It wasn't intentional, but that's how the enemy works and stuff like that. And then obviously with our first daughter dying of cancer at the age of 2, the same thing was now going on to God. God, why did you not come through? Why were you in there when we cried out and so on? Because it was a long sick bed and quite a tough situation and so on. And then we had our second daughter born, at that stage, just before the second one was born, after the death of the first one, God said to us, one day we'll have a piece of land with cottages on and bungalows and stuff where families would be restored and marriages would be restored. Anyway, we left it there and so on. But that was God imparting vision in order for us to not give up when our wheels fell off and so on. Anyway, then our third daughter came, and she also passed away, so we went through the pain of that one as well. And that's about when our marriage, the wheels fell off. And about 10 times we wanted a divorce and wanted to walk away. Unfortunately, God kept us together, and He also reminded us of the vision, but He kept us together. And anyway, so we had a fourth one born and a fifth one born and so on. But I'm just saying, it was a repetition of a certain lie that comes. So I can forgive Dad for what he's done. I can forgive a dad like that walking out on me. But the problem is not what Dad did or what he didn't do, what he should have done. The problem is that the enemy imparts a lie into our hearts, and that thing sits there. Unless you allow your heart to be open to the Lord and allow Him to impart truth, that thing will reproduce right through your life. And that's what I want to basically teach you as well. Similar situation, our daughter Salome, the fourth one, she grew up, and I ended up running export factories after I stopped my studies and so on, and working immense hours, 18 hours a day, 7 days a week. I was working, one Sunday a month I was off, so living on the estate, tea factories and stuff like that. I would see them when I rush home for half an hour during lunch, because I was out 3 o'clock in the morning, back 10, 11 o'clock at night and so on. So I was never there for them. And Salome, she's now a mother of 4. She went through a very vulnerable stage because I was just never there. And then when I rush out, even when I'm there during lunchtime, my mind is still at the factory with a million things that could go wrong and so on. And she would hold my face in her hands and make sure she makes eye contact, but knowing my brain is at work and I wasn't there, you know, and so on. Anyway, but then when I rush off to work, she would come with me to the bakkie and then give a hug and a kiss, and then I close the door and she starts crying, say, no daddy, another hug, another kiss. So I open the door again, that happens 2 or 3 times, and then I get irritated and I say, no, come on, now I must go. And that's where that voice inclination also comes through, you know, the harshness and the whatever. I got to go now, you know, I got to get to the factory and so on. And then in the tears she would say, Dad, you must come and visit again. And we laughed about it afterwards, but we were too stupid, too blind to see what we were doing to our daughter. Anyway, bottom line is, she grew up but always very insecure, and she ended up going to school and stuff, very small, very strong as well. And one break she beat up the 4 bullies of the class and so on, sorted them out forever, and she became like the mascot of the school. And all of a sudden she started withdrawing from me, no more hugs, no more kisses, and she started clinging onto her mom. And I thought, you know, what happened here? But the whole school made a big fuss about her. She was grade 2, but the smallest in the whole school. And so if the grade 7s had a fight, they will call her and say, go and call Salome, you know. So I thought it's now this macho thing of this little girl, you know, that will sort out everything and so on. She's now the tough girl, and tough girls don't kiss their dads or something like that. So I just kept on saying, I love you and whatever, and I gave her distance, and I thought, you know, this will blow over and so on. And 2 years later it didn't blow over, and I saw symptoms. We got involved in the ministry of Family Foundations, and we saw symptoms of molestation. And I thought, wow, Lord, was she molested? Did we not protect her? Were we not there for her? And stuff like that, and so on. And then we became aware of the symptoms of molestation is similar to that of a child with an absent parent, especially absent father. And so in her case, she was never molested. She was just, she didn't have a father in place. Work was always more important. So no matter how much I said to her, that I love you and whatever, my whole body language, everything I did showed her that my work, what is important to me, is more important than them and so on. I was never there, any prize givings, any sports activities, and she really achieved. And anyway, so I was the cause of that one, totally blind to a relational level of communication. My words always said I love you, and that was sincere. But my whole body language communicated to my whole family, also to my wife, that I will never be there for you. And that's how we walked with it. But we taught our kids the principles, and God opened our hearts. And even when I asked forgiveness towards Salome, because going through the first seminar that we did, God showed me how I messed up and so on, and with Salome especially. And I went and I made right with her and asked forgiveness and so on. But then God said, it's not about, because I said to her, trying to bring truth and saying, Salome, it was never that I didn't love you. I so desperately love you guys, but I wanted to make sure that I can provide for you properly, because we grew up fairly poorly, so you had to borrow a rugby jersey when you wanted to play rugby and that type of thing. Anyway, and God said, no, it wasn't about that. And He said it was about your own insecurity, your own feeling of, can I make it in life? I didn't have a father that communicated that to me. And I said to her, sure, Saloons, this is not even about you guys. This was just me trying to find myself in life. Am I good enough to make it, and so on. Anyway, and God started a beautiful healing process and so on. But then what happened then was we taught the kids and we started overcoming, and every time God revealed something more, we would say, please forgive us, and they would say, Dad, I've forgiven you, because we went through a whole process of restoration and it was beautiful. And I said, yes, I know you've forgiven me, but would you go to God? Because I was just instrumental, used by the enemy to impart that same lie to you of you don't belong, or you're not good enough, or you're not worthy, or you're not going to make it in life, and so on. And only God can settle that truth in your life, settle a lie with His truth. So we taught them how to turn to God, even though they've forgiven. And yes, you need to release forgiveness, otherwise you're keeping that person in bondage and yourself to a certain extent. So they learned how to release and then to say, Lord, that message that came to me through whatever in life, through whomever, was that truth, or what do you want to say about it? God will always bring truth in a situation. And our kids became masters. Our youngest daughter, Leonie, Adam, my beloved son, he is married to her with 3 beautiful children. But we've got 3 prophets in the family, so that's why he's got no hair. He's married to one of them. So straight shooters and so on. But she would always be very straight. She'll pull me and Mariki together when we've got a bit of an argument, and then just gently honouring and so on, pull me one side afterwards when we're fighting about something. And whoever you knows, remember, when we're fighting, we start on the subject, and it's not long. If we don't stop the fight, then it goes deeper, and just now we're attacking character. And then we're really talking on a relational level and so on. Anyway, so Leonie would take me one side and say, Dad, what you said on a topical level, that's 100% correct, and you're correct in that. But what you communicated to Mom on a relational level is this and this and this. And that's not a good message, and you need to go and ask forgiveness. And I say, oh, shucks, Lord. So, and she would gently go to Mariki and do the same there, and how can you say no when God puts His finger on something? And even the two of them, they would, many times, Mom would send them up to the room when there was a bit of a difference and dishonouring to one another, and say, you don't come out of the room unless you've asked forgiveness. And Salome would be the one that's very quick. I just want to get over and done with and get on with my life. So she would say, sorry, and let's go out. And Leonie would say to her, you don't tell me what you've done to my heart. You go nowhere, because now she's got Mom's authority. You go nowhere till you've told me what you've done to my heart. And Salome must think hard, what did I communicate to her? What was bad, not in what I did, but what I communicated in that 93%, that relational level, because that's the devastating one. That's the one that affects your identity and your value and stuff like that. So that's how they learn. So they now practicing on their husbands with good results there and so on. Amazing guys that they've married. One of the situations, and this is a daily thing that happens, where we mess up not because we malicious or anything. It's just the enemy wants to twist everything. So the enemy wants to make sure that the unity that should be there, that would result in the blessing, is distorted by communication. And you can say we all speak English, or we all speak whatever language and so on. But there's a relational thing that makes the communication not correct and so on, and cause damage in that situation. We had a situation a few years ago where our son and daughter Salome and Gert came to the farm, just had another baby and so on, and they were still finding their feet, and I was getting a bit anxious because it's been a few months now. They got to get going with camps and this and that and whatever else. We had another couple there that was going to start Foundations for Farming. I came just for that, and they also weren't getting going, and quite a few months later, and I'm getting a bit anxious with the 2 young guys now. Come on guys, we need to start moving and so on. But we had another older couple about our age and so on. They'd gone through quite a horrific situation. They lost their son, big strong farmer boy or whatever, age 26 or so on, through leukemia. But it was a long 4-year sick bed, and being a vegetable basically, and spending millions all over the world, flying to different places to try and save his life. Eventually passed away. And they had a 20 million rand apple farm in the Free State. And Mark, our friend, ended up leaving the farm, letting his wife look after the kid and farming and stuff. And he went to find a job in town and so on, just to try and keep keep the thing going and so on. And all of that stuff. So God said, and then they lost the farm, the whole 20 million rand gone and so on. After the son had died and so on. And God said to us, bring them home to the farm just for as long as they want to. 6 months, a year, it doesn't matter. Just to give them a place of healing, a place of restoration and so on. With no expectations, no work done whatsoever. So Mark and them had also arrived with all these new couples together and very little happening and so on. But Mark being a farmer and also with a possible lie of, I'm not doing enough. Did I do enough to save my kid's life? Did I do enough to save the farm? Could I have done more? And he's jumping in, working early mornings and stuff like that. He's already working. So the only one that shouldn't be working is working. The ones that should be working is not yet working. And anyway, so I'm sitting with the guys and say, come guys, we need to get going. And then a day or two later, Mark and Margie, his wife, but he had a insulin problem or a diabetes problem, so he had to have tea in the morning and have his food and his injection and stuff like that. Anyway, so our grandchildren absolutely loved Mark and Margie. It was like another grandpa, and they would always go and have tea with him. And anyway, so Mark and Margie is on the way to town this morning, and they going past us, and I saw something's not right there. And I said, Mark, what happened? And he said, no, something happened, but he didn't want to go there. And he was really hurting. He was sitting in trouble because he loves our son and grandchildren very, very much. And something happened that could communicate pain and dishonor to him and so on. And I said, Mark, please speak. And his wife said, speak. And he eventually said, no, he was sitting, having his morning breakfast, sitting having tea. And then Gert and Stefanie walked past. Stefanie is our oldest granddaughter. And they always wanted to go and have tea with him. And anyway, so as they walked past where he was sitting, Stefanie turned and saw him sitting and said, no, Dad, Uncle Mark is not working, he's drinking tea. So what is the message he's getting? The message he's getting is, because Leon has now just said to the guys, come on guys, you've got to get some work done and so on. He's the only one working, but he's being accused of not working. He's sitting having tea. And secondly, my son is using my granddaughter to be a speedcop to also look at whether he's working all the time and so on. So that's the message he got. And it really devastated him. And so I said to Mark, I said to you guys, please, if there's something there that doesn't feel right, please go and talk. And let's walk in openness, walk in transparency. And please go and sort that one out. And I said, there's got to be something else. And even if you bring it, so please promise to me you can bring it in the open. Otherwise, I get the three of you together and we talk it out. There's got to be another side. I know my son, that would not be his heart. And even if it is his heart, if you go to him and say, sure, Gert, I experienced this, why did this happen and so on. And then Gert can say, sorry, Mark, I was out of line, and I repent of that, and I ask forgiveness, and immediately the relationship is restored. But I said, there's got to be something else. And next moment, so I got Mark to commit, he'll go and talk. And the next moment, the Holy Spirit told me what happened. He was having tea. Bella, or Stefanie, we call her Bella, she wanted to go and have tea with Uncle Mark, and Gert just correctly said, you guys, don't bother them when they're working. When they're having tea, that's fine, you can go and have tea with them, because they always get cookies as well and so on. Anyway, so when she walked past, she said, no, Dad, he's not working, he's drinking tea, which means I can go and visit him now. But the message he got, and that's what the enemy does, he just twists the thing, and that's what that scripture says. They confuse the communication. And that's what's causing the most damage in all our relationships, whether it's a workplace or whatever else. And if you don't bring it in the open, you don't deal with it, you'll reap the consequences, you'll reap the damage of that and so on. And when I said it to him, it was like the world fell off his shoulders. And because he really loves our children, he really loves grandchildren, and how could they communicate that to him? How can he be so bad that he's now being watched on whether he's working and stuff like that? And so just receiving the truth, that's why it's so vital, not just to be forgiven or ask forgiveness, but to receive the truth in the situation. Because at that moment the truth set him free. And anyway, so I told my son, I phoned him and said, please, Uncle Mark's going to come and see you about this situation. He said, no, Dad, I will tell you what happened there. I said, no, I know, God already told me. And I said that, and he said, that's exactly what happened. So what I'm saying is the enemy would want to make sure that there's devastation caused. And we can either just harbor it and walk with what we thought they said, we thought they meant, and it's always regarding value, it's always regarding identity. And you'll totally walk away from unity, and you'll be the one robbing the unity, you'll be the one robbing the blessing in the unity that God wanted to give. Sorry, over time, so I'm just going to cut short and so on. But what I'm saying is there's help. We can help one another by talking, by saying, Lord, what are you saying to us here, and what is hurting one another. And if I can just touch quickly on husband and wife, just what is the scripture is very clear on, I think, Ephesians 5:33, where it says about husband and wife. It says, husband, love your wives, and wives, respect your husbands. Just those two messages. But what does love mean to a wife, and what does respect mean to a husband? And basically, a good summary of what does love mean to a wife is, I want to be a high priority in my husband's eyes, in his life. I want to be a high priority. That's one of the key things for a wife. That means love. And if you just look at my lifespan, factory was always most important. So that one I missed completely. I was never there for my wife. She was never a high priority. She was always somewhere in the background after all my work needs that I was driving so hard on was fulfilled. Does my opinion matter? That's the second thing from the wife's side. Does she? Because she's there for a relationship. So does her opinion matter? Do I involve her in things? Yes, I'm still the head of the home, I make decisions, but do I involve her and draw from her wisdom, draw from her sensitivity to the Lord and so on? The third thing is when we make mistakes, when we realize we messed up, do we take ownership, or do we find reasons, excuses for why we did what we did or didn't do what we should have done and so on? She wants to know that when we mess up, just to really say, I realize I messed up. And I'll touch on quickly on the husband side. What does honor mean to the husband, or respect? First of all, acceptance. Do you as wives accept us? Do we match up in your standard as husband, as father, in our workplace? Do you accept us? Are we good enough in your measurement and so on? The second one is admiration. Admiration is basically like blessing. It opens the heart. It opens the heart to prosper. Do we admire our husbands for being this amazing dad, or amazing grandpa, or amazing lover, or amazing guy at work, the wisdom in his decision making at work and that type of thing? Do we admire that? The last one is appreciation. Just appreciation for the small things. Those three things is what's important to the husbands and so on. So I don't have time to elaborate on them. But basically saying, how can we learn? How can we undo where we found ourselves at not having known? And we can either just ask one another, when I see you upset or something, would you, if God doesn't show me myself, can I just ask you, would you tell me what you're experiencing when I did that or whatever? And then the other one can verbalize and say, when you did that or when you said that, I felt violated, I felt I don't belong, or you don't matter, I don't matter to you, or something like that. Or you don't, my opinion doesn't matter, whatever the case might be. And then don't justify, don't find a reason to justify what you did, because that's all topical stuff. So whatever, you'll never solve your problem, your relational problems, if you stay on a topical level, because it's never the issue. The issue is always the 93% the relational issues and so on. So may you really learn to verbalize it. And we were at one stage where, the girls growing up years, where Meriki and Salome sort of came to a place where they were bumping heads and so on, and Meriki realized there's pain caused, and Salome didn't have the ability to verbalize what was happening and so on. Now they know how to speak. But and Meriki didn't know what was causing it, and Meriki would ask her, say, Salome, what is wrong? And Salome said nothing. She couldn't verbalize what was happening on the inside of herself. And eventually we prayed, and God gave Meriki the revelation, which is first choice, is to go to the other one to say, I realized when I did that and that, I communicated that and that message regarding your value to you. And for that I'm very sorry. And when Meriki started getting a revelation from God of what was she communicating to Salome, then the tears started flowing. And then Salome came to a place where she could also verbalize and so on. And today they're best friends. And we could have lost them. We could have lost that relationship. still loving one another, but there's no unity, there's no friendship, there's no nothing. And we lose many kids like that and so on. Just through the inability to understand communication and working on that. And you might say, but what about a relationship that's so far damaged they don't want to forgive? Because I've been like a serial offender, and I've done it so many times. I've always said sorry, but it's always been for the offense, or for the deed that I did. And there's what we've seen through the years. There's three aspects. If you apply them, it's almost automatic for forgiveness to take place. The first one is now understanding topical relational communication. If I can communicate to my wife, say it's me and Rick, and I can say to her, now I understand when I did that and that and that, or I said that, or I cut you out here, whatever, I communicated to you that I don't care about you, that you don't matter, that your opinion is not valuable, or that you're not important in my life, and that everything else is more important, all the kids are more important. So for the first time they now hearing from me, now he understands what he's done to my heart. The second thing is I convinced Mickey that I want you to know that I care about the damage I've done, the pain I've caused in your heart. And then thirdly is a commitment that I will do my utmost not to make that same message carry over again. But there's been patterns set, so most probably I'm gonna mess up on that one again. But if I do, will you help me? Will you help me and point that out and help me to stop? And we've seen incredible stuff that was where there was no hope of recovering. We've seen it just immediately with that message coming through, where there's a softening of heart and a reconciliation and so on. So what I'm saying is we can learn, we can ask one another, we can once in a day just come together and say, is there anything I did today that devalued you, that dishonored you, that hurt you, that made you feel of less value or something like that? Just as a husband and wife, and with the kids as well. It will teach them from a young age to respond to that. And how then do we work with that and so on.